Okay, welcome back to edition something of the coaching call. So we are on a relatively warm Wednesday. It's very hot for the UK, but it's only relatively warm for where we're heading. So it seems a good bit of acclimatization to go on. Anyway, how are you doing, Fletch? Apart from sweating.
Yeah, I think me just sitting here is me acclimating to what we're going to be going through. But I'm good. Have started my heat training myself. So did the Sunday run out after you did yours, and then went on and did a little walk in the heat yesterday, and then a little jog in the heat today. So I'm going to keep the ball rolling, and because I don't want to be the one getting shipped off to the hospital because I didn't do my training when you're still out there doing your big run.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I guess the topic of today is probably to talk through the weekend. So we had a kind of crew dress rehearsal, a kind of crew weekend. Everyone came down to stay at mine. We had all the crew there, plus a few crew additions, and we did a long run, or rephrase it. I did a long run, and did a 80K run as a kind of crew, the last long run of the training, I suppose, and kind of with the crew kind of going alongside and going up the road and just trying to work stuff out. And we had other discussions and conversations as part of the weekend, but just to kind of get everyone together and really kind of dial it in a bit. So um, yeah, I guess we should walk through or talk through what happened or what didn't happen and what we noticed and things, and then we can pick it up from there.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, it was a great day, I suppose, from from our perspective. Not sure if you quite got over it yet, but the conditions kind of worked out perfectly because it was warm, but I say it wasn't too hot, so we kind of got a good safe space to practice. And it was more like from our side of the logistics of the rehydration strategy and the fielding strategy, how you fared on with the different products that we were using outside of the controlled environment of like your normal weekly run, but also outside the heat chamber as well, and being sort of very specific about things. So yeah, it was great. You didn't tell me that you were quite as much of a good cook as you as you demonstrated. So I feel like I've got to brush up my skills now before we host you again.
Yeah. Well, it was a tiring weekend. I mean, it was not only 80K run, but catering for you know
Yeah,
kid meals and grown up meals and all the rest of it. So no, it was good. It was good. I mean, it was good. Nice to get everyone together. Nice to spend a bit of time where the reason for meeting up was the sort of was the run and thinking about stuff and going into some specifics, and then we're only what 5 weeks away, ish. So it's kind of dialing in now, and focusing on the exact things we need to do rather than just, oh yeah, we've got to do that at some point. It's now kind of getting it sorted. So yeah, that was good.
no,
Um,
exactly. I mean, all the hard work's been done. Like all the volume training and all the hard sessions have kind of been achieved. Now it's basically just keep ticking over a couple of little bits here and there to work on. Some really quick adaptations we can create, like the downhill running you just did today. More kind of like some of the resilience bits and pieces, plyometrics, hopping, jumping, those kind of things. Just kind of keep everything in touch, and then yeah, to get you to the start line safely. That's kind of all it's about.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, we set out from here. We did the plan was to an 80K run, sort of 50 miles. It wasn't very hot, but it was, I guess, high 20s. I didn't really look, but it was reasonably hot. Anyway, I set out with a thermal top on, which I was quite pleased to take off later in the run. But the aim of the run was to not make it. It wasn't a sort of in my head. It was like, I'm going to make this run hard, and I'm going to kind of sort of push when if I was running a lot further, I would sort of pull back and take a moment to kind of take a bit more fuel on, or take a bit, hydrate a bit more, or slow down or recover, and this was a bit more like at those points push on to make it harder, which was successfully achieved. But yeah, so it was a good training run. We did sort of 80ish, well, 80K flatish for most of it, with a few kind of climbs around Chepstow. And yeah, it was interesting to, I guess, to just to put into practice the kind of the consumption, trying to consume that much fuel right at that pace, was hard. You know, there was, and after, I've not, I mean, you'll remember because you were writing stuff down, but after a number of hours, like the same fuel every hour was becoming harder to deal with, and so sort of having to have a plan to be able to change that up, and sort of have sections of the race where it's like this fuel, then we do this for a bit, then we go back to this. Just trying to learn some of those lessons so that we, I guess, in my mind, in Death Valley, it's like making sure we've got everything to be able to make those choices on the fly, because it's not like you can just pop to the shops, right? There's no, you've got to have everything with you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that palate fatigue, which I don't think you've said that you've experienced a huge amount before. So it was quite a novel experience to be able to sort of think on our feet, like, okay, I'm not, I can't get this down at the moment. How do we spice that up as a crew? So then adding some of those Morton flavorings, the add-ons into it to change the flavor profile and just give you something else to chug on down. But yeah, so as the sort of the run progressed, I think because of the general pace being a little bit faster than we were probably we're definitely going to be faster than we're doing in Badwater. I mean, we were sort of averaging for the first sort of 10K around about 5 minutes a kilometer, give or take, and then I think that's when the t-shirt kind of then had its effect, the long sleeve, the thermal top, and then suddenly like, cool, okay, now from here on out, we started to settle in and around like the sort of high five to low, very low sixes, because you pretty much did the whole 80K in bang on 8 hours, right? So off the back of that, that's a lot faster than we're going to be traveling in Death Valley. So that's probably going to add to that overall intensity and that overall sense of fatigue, including the palate as well. So as much as, you know, we're going to have options 100%. I think the general pace being a lot slower is going to help you get things down easier. But the problem is you're going to have to get more things down. So is this going to be one of those sort of like a bit of a catch-22? But definitely having options is going to be a good thing. Picking the things up from the shop, being like, okay, like, what have they got in here that we can just have just in case? Like walking in, there's like 2 watermelons. Okay, that's cool. Let's just get one of those, chunk it up, get that down. How does that feel? Oh, okay, actually, it's like really refreshing for a moment. We've got a 5-minute break here. Boom, let's get you cool down, have some of that, change the flavors, and then get back on the strategy again. But you know, as we were kind of discussing over WhatsApp, maybe also switching to a high density fuel as well with the Morton 320s, 360s. Yeah, with those, with prioritizing the fuel in a smaller delivery, we can then get back on the hydration again, because, you know, what we did realize is we're probably down by about 1 liter an hour over that long period of time. So, you know, bearing in mind you're sweating through around about 2.5 liters to up to 3 liters an hour. By the end of that 8 hours, that accumulates. Obviously, then by the end of the 30 hours, that also accumulates as well. So what I would like to be able to do is front load you as much as we can with that stuff in the early stages of the run, so that if, for example, things do start getting tiring and hard, at least we're on top of that then, rather than pushing on with it a bit too much and then going, but it's okay, we'll catch up with it later. And then suddenly it's like, now it's getting hard to get things down. Now it's suddenly a chore to drink water at that volume. And we have to kind of like play emergency catch up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, like as you know, we went through how many times I went past the car, but you know, I didn't stop. I just would, or I'd stop for like 2 strides and pick up a bottle and carry on. So I think it very much in the race that will be different, because it will be like, okay, I have, you know, this weekend was very much like, I'm just going to keep pushing past and kind of, because I wanted to kind of get too hot, right? I wanted to kind of sort of put myself in that position, because that's part of training, right? Is to you do that in training so that you know what goes on when you know how to avoid stuff in race day. And you know, we were making no efforts to cool down, for example. You know, there was like um well, there was the occasional effort in the very last bit, but it was really kind of like push on, keep moving. And I think, you know, if I think back to a normal race, you know, an ultra or something, you know you have to prevent the problem that's going to happen in 10 hours by fueling now or by hydrating now or by whatever. So that means, okay, if I've got to walk for 5 minutes because I have to get this down me, then I walk for 5 minutes to get it down me. Whereas at the weekend, it was much more kind of, let's just keep moving. Let's kind of, see where we are. And I had a whole meal to cook when I got back. So I was
Got to get back quick.
I was worried about being too late to cook for everyone. So although I was in the process probably dehydrated sufficiently that I wasn't able to cook as quick as if I just slowed down a bit. So maybe there's a catch 22 there.
Yeah, we could have got a Domino's or something. It's okay.
Yeah, no. I had a plan, and it wasn't takeaway pizza. So yeah,
Other pizzas are available, obviously.
yeah.
Before they start
No,
getting free advertising.
yeah, exactly. And I think I guess it would be interesting to know, how you were you had the crew car, you guys were doing something. It wasn't a sort of full on sort of routine because there was far less to do, right? It was like only a handful of things to sort of sort out, but it threw up quite a few. We definitely learned a few very specific things to sort out for the race, and how that was.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, those bottles with the handles on just kind of saved a heck load of annoyance. Those floppy floppy flasks that end up basically like a flaccid thing you just have to carry around with you the whole time, doing your head in. And then also being able to then look at, okay, well, if we're making up drinks for you, just making sure that we know what's in them before we give them to you, so we are keeping on top of that strategy. So, at some points, because like you said, there wasn't the normal amount of stuff that we're going to have to deal with. So we didn't have Skylink. We didn't have that to set up. We didn't have to charge devices and who's going to be in charge of technology. One person was kind of in charge of route, but then we had pacers swapping in and out with the car driving, and spontaneous 50Ks being thrown in here and there. So the hydration and fueling became like the focus point, really. And I think that's where everyone wants to help out. And then being able to then keep in touch with everyone, going, cool, what was in that drink? Let's just put it to one side. And then having that cohesive message. So it'd be me and Rich on hydration in Badwater. So we'll only have to be just two of us thinking about it, with then maybe a third person in the understudy ranks. But then, yeah, that was the fun bit, I suppose, in the practice is cool. Okay, actually, we can sort of relax. And whenever you give the human a chance to relax, the brain starts wandering off in all different directions. You're like, oh, crap, we've taken the wrong direction here, or and so on. So it's going to be very different when we're out there. There's going to be a lot more responsibilities. But it kind of does prove to us that it's just really, really hard to concentrate for that long and keep things on the straight and narrow. And when you're going to be in a much more precarious situation, it's even more important that we're able to switch on and also like factor in our recovery as well, as much as you'll be like, for your recovery, whatever.
No, but it's hard. You can tell, like you can, because you basically, you drive up the road and then you kind of get stuff ready, but you're going to be sitting on the side of a road in the same temperature I'm running in. It's not like there's no respite there, and if, as the crew kind of rotate around the responsibilities, at some point someone will be like, time to rest or sleep. But, you're sleeping in a car that's stop, start, doors open, doors closed,
Yeah.
everyone talking, it's like, it's quite full on, but it's not constant full on. It's sort of very stop, start the whole time. And I think that's the bit that is, like you say, takes quite a bit of concentration, because otherwise it's like, yeah, like that kind of continual I'm on, I'm off, I'm on, I'm off, I'm on, I'm off is quite tiring. And that's going to take 30 whatever something hours, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's a long old slog. But you did have time to go and have a refreshment and a plate of chips and stuff, which
We
as I
did
was
we did exploit some of the recovery times,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. I did as I was slightly getting fatigued of drinking sports drinks and all the rest of it. Opened the WhatsApp chat to see a plate of someone with their hands in a plate of chips. I was
Well, I mean, we stopped off in one of the things. I called us just get some food in, and then I think it was
yeah.
Brad who was like, "What's that over there?" Like, I think it's a chippy. They're like, "Oh, let's get chips." And then that's when Nick came back after pacing you for one of the bits, and he was like,
Yeah.
"Right, where's food?" There's a chippy over there. And he's like, "Yeah, sounds good."
Yeah. But we had lots of things. Yeah, we had closed roads to deal with,
Hmm.
which was really nice. Rich and I were running, and we went over a bridge that was closed, and so we had a nice empty road to ourselves. But that did mean that the crew car couldn't get through.
Yeah,
But it was a good example of how we were like we had the radios, we had to communicate. We said, you guys told us how much further the round trip was to get back, and therefore we knew we had enough stuff with us. So we pressed on, and it kind of all worked out. So yeah, there were lots of things which were minor but useful to kind of just to kind of work through.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the benefit of I say the benefit of bad water, the silver lining around the navigation side of things is bad water is it's going to be so much easier to get from A to B. There's not going to have to be any like massive twists and turns and motorways to sort of navigate through. It's like, from what I can see from the Google map, it's like pretty much a straight road all the way through. So it's going to be a little bit easier on the navigation side of things. Although a couple of years ago they did have a diversion because of a flooding, and so they had to like go off the route and then basically create a new one. So that was something to factor in, but I don't see it happening in that way this year, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just don't know yet, but yeah, it'll certainly be. Um, the main road is just one road, so if we get lost on that, we've achieved something quite unique. Um, yeah, so we're into so this week, so that was Saturday. Yesterday I just went out. Today I did some hills. We're into kind of bit more heat training. Or keeping going on the heat training. I think it's quite apparent that it's been a while since we've done one of these, so it was definitely. I went in the heat chamber last week, and the week before, and it's very the kind of fall off in what you can maintain is very kind of linear. So the previous week, I wasn't far away from the 10-day block, and I did another session. I basically carried on pretty much where I left off on the 10-day block. And then a sort of week later, things had kind of dropped off again. And it was as if I was sort of back to how I felt halfway-ish through the first training 10-day block. So it's very kind of very quick to adapt, but quite quick to lose it. And so this kind of maintenance period that we're in now feels quite important. Before the kind of the sort of big block, I suppose, the big 10-day block that we'll do just before I go out there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we're going to hopefully have that bump up again before we shoot off. And ideally we're trying to like squeeze that 10-day heat training as close to the start as possible, because as you witnessed, the drop off is pretty steep. And so it's just going to be one of those juggling acts around, okay, how do we get it as close to possible, but obviously factoring in like recovery, but also the flight and getting out there, so on. So, yeah, it'll be fun, but it's happening again. So that bump that you felt halfway through until the end is basically where you're starting off again. So hopefully we can, as you're feeling, keep that maintenance going and then push up again for that last bit, get all the benefits on the race day, and away we go.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so other things, I think we did, like you said, today was hills back into the downhill hill territory, which I think is probably the bit that well, certainly from my experience of Nova Coli, sort of round two, like, but actually I think it's the bit that people miss or undertrain perhaps the most for possibly any race, but certainly for ultras, is that you, you know, you do loads of training, you will get up the uphills because that's much more like a physical, that's like an engine, kind of much more of an engine thing. The downhills, if you do not train the downhills, you will absolutely destroy your legs and your quads won't work. I mean, it's just like, it's as simple as that. Like you can, and so people in their heads are like, oh, how much elevation is there? How much elevation, or how are the climbs? Like the climbs, yeah, they can be hard and they can be hard work, but it's the hill, it's the downhill. So on Badwater, there's a big downward hill descent. It's like, I'm trying to look at the map now. It's like 15K or something. It's like a 15K descent that you will run, as temperature dependent. If you aren't prepared for that, that will absolutely annihilate your quads for the remainder of the race. And that in ultras and long races, it's like, it's the downhills that destroy your legs. Okay, everything else destroys you. but downhills are the bit I think that are underappreciated in terms of training. And I think, you've proven by what we did last sort of previous times, like well, you can describe it, but the kind of adaptation or the ability to withstand it is relatively quick to gain. I think.
Yeah, no, it is very much so. It's a neuromuscular adaptation, which historically is super quick because it's more. Our neuromuscular system is built to adapt as fast as possible because it's basically in control of either our movement or our survival, and therefore both. But yeah, if you're looking at like some of the data that came off the back of. I can't remember his name now. There's a researcher who's basically sort of written the book on how to run UTMB. But looking at the data from those who are in the elite ultra marathon, trail marathon field versus the great runners who are probably just a little bit what we call sub-elite, the difference between them really isn't the up the hill speed, velocity, but there's a drastic difference between them and the downhill. So the elite are just able to maintain a much faster pace downhill than the great runners are. And that comes down to this neurological adaptation of this what we call damage resilience. Damage resistance is another way of saying it. Ultimately, running downhill, what's mechanically happening is as you hit the ground, your quad, therefore the tendon wrapping around the top of the knee, is stretching rapidly at high velocities and high force. So we call that as an eccentric loading. So your muscle is being lengthened but under tension. It's only for a short space of time, but unfortunately running downhill increases your contact time comparatively to running on the flat. So actually from a time perspective, it's quite a lot. And that eccentric loading is what creates muscle damage more than the concentric or the pushing action of going uphill. And that muscle damage then starts to affect your running economy. It starts to affect your ability to extract oxygen or use oxygen as a catalyst to create energy. And everything else starts to fall by the wayside. So the longer you can spare muscle damage for, the more you're able to retain all of your good qualities as a ultramarathon runner.
Yeah, and I mean, that's been my experience, both without the training or with the training. But that, I mean, that it's so true, and actually in this weekend, there was a moment in the middle where I was running with Rich and we were running downhill and we had run 50K, or I'd run 50K or a bit more by then, no, more like 60. And he said, we've just nudged under 5. And then we kept running downhill, and he then said, we are now at 4:30s, and it was fine. It was like, and that in a way, and then we carried on and all the rest of it. But to be able to be running and then to drop to 4:30 pace on a descent, not really trying to go fast, but just kind of being able to run that freely at 60K into a run, and then carry on without the kind of the negative or a big downside to that is really reassuring, and at the end, okay, I was a bit, whatever, dehydrated and all the rest of it, but at the end, I was running, yeah, the last bit in, I was like running strong and feeling fine, legs feeling fine, not the rest of me. But that kind of, that training kind of coming through and to a point, and I think that's where you feel it. You don't really feel it on the flat and It's when you've done some downhill or done something, and then it makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, for sure. And in the lab setting, what we'll do for some people to induce the muscle damage to look at things like recovery times specifically. So there's a a number of protocols you can use. There's like the leg press 1 rep max, where you're basically doing eccentrics with a very heavy weight on the leg press. Downhill running is also a protocol you can use. So you're running them on a treadmill in reverse, and you're running them down the hill that way. But that's all to induce this muscle damage, which is what people feel in DOMS, this sort of ache and this pain the next day. And that's actually what people feel after the marathons when they go and they can't walk downstairs. That's this muscle damage bit. But then that's what protocol we would use to look at something like an intervention on recovery. So turmeric, for example, does turmeric have a anti-inflammatory aid or an ergogenic aid in that to make people bounce back faster, so on and so forth. So yeah, if you go run down 10 kilometers worth of downhill, that's a lab grade muscle damage protocol for you to go and go, okay, I'm expecting some soreness right now. But then you then got to go and run another 50 miles on top of that again.
Bit more than 50 at that stage.
Yeah, before the next downhill,
Yeah.
We've got to think about, like, are you robust enough to run down that first one and retain all of the good qualities that are going to keep you going through the race? So yeah, that's basically where, if like even outside of your training, but just like if people are at home, like jumping off a bench, not jumping, like trying to jump off as high as you can for a bench, but just stepping off a park bench, landing in a quarter squat position with good form is an eccentric load. And you can do that a number of times, obviously building yourself up, but that's going to just induce this little bit of work that after a while is going to create muscle damage. And the more you do of them, I think like you responded super quick, you can do 20 and then suddenly like, oh yeah, I feel a bit my legs for the next day. Then suddenly the next week you're doing 40 and then you're going to do 60 and then we can keep on going really. There's probably a dose limit that we can prescribe, but it's also part of what we call the repeat bout effect. And that applies to all training. So your brain, your central nervous system is incredibly good at remodeling tissues to make it more resilient for next time. So it's all part of that process.
Yeah. Well, I overdid it today because I lost count of my intervals. So did a bonus one for today. I guess we're into the sort of fine tuning and picking off elements to focus on rather than massive sessions. I think there might be a couple of sessions in there. Never say never.
Yeah, from never say never. But from a major long run perspective, we're done. There's no need now to throw in a 60K or even I'd say a marathon is probably also right at the very top end. I would say it's just not needed because there's just so much fatigue that we accumulate from those longer sessions. Whereas now as you said, we're going to sort of sharpen up and logistically get ready, mentally get ready, do the heat adaptation. So we're kind of working on the specificity piece of the product now.
Yeah. I think, and that's kind of how I, now it's like thinking what I think about when I'm out running. Like it's very much like starting lots of visualization or just kind of trying to get my head in the space I will be in when I'm out there, and sort of trying to kind of get that dialed in, because I think it's I've done a lot of I've done a lot of running. I've done a lot of events, and it's no, it's like starting to ask the questions and ask and answer the questions now that you kind of think will come up, and just going over stuff and sort of being a bit boring. It's like it's kind of repetition and like thinking about stuff and thinking about the same thing over and over again, and just trying to kind of drill it in and really kind of take all that history and regurgitate it, go over it again and sort of remind myself, okay, I have done this, I have done that, or whatever the processes are, because it's that you kind of draw on in the race when you're not thinking quite logically or quite structured. It's you need to have kind of reminded yourself in the build up about all the things you have done, because it's very easy to kind of undermine yourself and like self sabotage um, without well, yeah, it's very easy to fall into those traps. So as much as you can do in the build up to reinforce that, you know, yeah, I was able to do this and I have done the training and I have done the long sessions and I have done, because the self doubt will creep in. It
Mhm.
always does. And so the more of that you can stack up now, and that becomes the focus. And so having like lots of really hard sessions between now and the race is sort of counterproductive, because you're then focusing on those sessions too much. And what you really need to be doing is sort of focusing in your crazy old head, or your own crazy old head, and just trying to kind of dial that stuff in, because that's what you need. That's the kind of real, I don't know what you call it, the kind of fuel or the kind of the, the building blocks you will draw on in a race.
Yeah, well, it's a muscle, right? And you've got to train it in the same way you train any other muscle. And I think people, we did a podcast with a sports psychologist, and it's one of the last things people consider to be trainable is their own mind. Um, and this is one of the main reasons I kind of found myself in running coaching. Really, was off the back of my Thai boxing experience. When you're about to go through the ropes into the ring and you're about to get punched in the face, you question yourself a lot, and you question what.
To be honest, with good reason.
Yeah, I mean, people question me all the time, but when you start to like sort of doubt your own abilities a lot. You start to doubt whether you did enough. Obviously, like a training camp will last 15 weeks, and you're kind of going through the motions, you're doing the training, you're so focused on that, just getting the workouts in, then suddenly it's like a week before, and you're like, oh, but I missed that run on a Wednesday like 3 weeks ago, or whatever happens, and your mind just starts to almost make up fictions around what that could mean. And when my coach sat me down, and he was like a very East End London black dude who had no qualms telling you exactly how life was, which I won't repeat what he said literally, but it's basically like you've got to think about your facts, not your fictions, and all the stuff you've done to get here. Bring that to the front and center. Look through your training diary, all those sessions you did, all that work you did is proof of what actually happened, not what's going on in your head right now, thinking about what could have happened or what it could mean. That's all fiction. So, yeah, 100%. Like getting into the mindset now is probably where a lot of people do the more counterintuitive bit, which is they kind of treat it like an exam and they try and cram the training in now because they feel like if they do more, it's going to have a better result.
Yeah, and I mean, it just doesn't like it's, it's yeah, and I think, and that's the thing, like the heat training was probably the first or the most specific training that was like, this is now very race specific, and now it's like the downhill stuff. It's like these are now the kind of sharpening the knife type stuff. They're kind of the dialing it in. You're not now going to make in a month. I'm not going to get fitter. I'm not going to move that. I'm not going to change that process. Like, if I've been training for how many years, what's a month going to do? Like I can make a mistake, right? I can cock it up now. Like I can do stuff that would be bad, but I'm not going to fundamentally change my like VO2 is not going to shift. They're just not going to move. And so it's kind of, okay, so what can you do? Because actually now is the time where you really want to be doing something. You feel like, day off now it's more frustrating than a day off when I was, knackered after a long interval session.
Yeah.
Because the day off now feels like, okay, what can I do? Like, what am I, I'm not making progress. I'm not making progress because you haven't got this sort of big load or big fatigue or big all these other stuff. It's much more, what do we do? How do we dial it in? And how do we make, how do we make some progress? But it's got to be specific and targeted now because there isn't this sort of general just get fitter or
Mm.
just get faster. That's not, it's not going to happen, right? It's not going to, I'm not going to, well, I don't think I'm going to get fitter and I don't think I'm getting any faster. Well, not in a month.
No.
So it's like, it's all the little bits we can do and making sure that that kind of gets tied together into progress because that's what you want to feel you've gone into a race with. It's like that kind of momentum, all those words, the kind of momentum, progress, consistency, targeting. It's all that kind of stuff just kind of coalescing around. Now we're ready.
Percent, and we are.
There we go. Good stuff. Well, I think next week or more of the same, and then we'll catch up again. I think we've got the conversation about hydration will come out soon. I don't know when
Yes.
that'll come out soon, which I think
Yeah.
will be interesting. We'll share that across because that's insightful.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did our track session last week where we had, which was also really interesting, right? The questions people asked. So for context, I went to the one track sessions up in London. Not your typical preparation for a long run, doing intervals around the track, but it was a bit of fun. And we had a Q&A session afterwards, and um, Mo Adan, I can't Mo Adan, who's a GB team kind of marathon runner, and me, who's not. Answering questions, but it's really interesting the way the questions came from the kind of group and how different the responses were for someone who runs really fast for relatively, for like a long distance racing, and someone who runs slowly over a really long way, and how all that came together. So it was quite fun or interesting.
Yeah. No, it was really good. I think to hear everyone's questions, it all kind of revolves around, what can I do, what should I do, but also like what inspires you to do that. So there was quite, I think, good for them to hear you, like what's the driving force and what's getting you out of bed in the morning and why. What's going to be the North Star that you're aiming for? But then there was a couple of moments where we had to contextualize it a little bit. As Mo was like, "Oh yeah, when I'm running a half marathon, I don't drink anything." And I had to pause everyone and go, "That's because it only takes them an hour."
Yeah, yeah.
Don't go and not drink anything for your half marathon. That's going to be maybe up to 2 hours, and maybe beyond. So I think pinch of salt, literally, but also a little bit of context also comes into play there.
Yeah. But it was, I mean, I think the hydration topic is massive and we won't do it now. But I think the bit there that was telling was actually its duration that was the key. So he was talking about basically the questions were how much would he drink and how much would he fuel in a half marathon or a marathon, and the gist of it was in a half marathon he might have some fuel but pretty much just runs it. But that's because it's an hour. For most people an hour is about 10K. And so for a 10K, not many, I wouldn't consider taking anything out for an hour if I was running that far. I wouldn't take anything. So he doesn't either because it's the same time, right? You can only your sweat rate is per hour. It's not per kilometer. That's the kind of difference, isn't it? And so, yeah, it was interesting how the questions how questions completely went sort of different directions depending on who we were talking to, but the context was the same. It was like it's well, horses for courses, but it's duration that's the key thing here because and I've always said it, like the people running a marathon who are or an ultra who are out on the course for 5 hours or 10 hours, they're really fast, but they're only out there for 5 hours or 10 hours. The people in the same race who are slow could be out for 30 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a whole different thing to be doing something for 30 hours than 10 hours. And so the duration is the big one.
Oh, big time, big time. Yeah, even when it comes down to fueling, so like people are like, oh, how many gels do you have? And it's like, oh, we'll probably have like 2 water bottles with some fluid, with some fuel in, and a couple of gels. And like, again, that's because it takes you just over 2 hours to do for a marathon. Whereas, the general public are looking at being out there for 6 hours or so, they're going to have to factor fueling in a heck load more than he does. Yeah, okay, he's burning at a higher rate and can therefore absorb at a higher rate, but still, just the amount of time they're out for, they're going to have to uh, be much more conscious of the logistics for sure. So yeah, it was fun to get the community who normally just have me blabbering on all the time, to have somebody else blabbering on too.
Yeah, exactly. Turns out I could blabber. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was good though. It was really good fun. I will definitely, well, I won't do it the next couple of weeks, but I'll definitely
Yeah.
do it again because it was fun. It was fun to do, and you felt really fast because the track's a bit shorter. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I was like, God, I'm flying around this track.
That's it. It's always all about the placebo effect.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. How to, yeah, good stuff. All right, well, Fletch, I will catch up with you soon, and we will, yeah, we will touch base.
Sounds great. Have a good one.
Keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cheers.